Tell me, how do I restore my sight?
You must be empty. There is only the Force.
Show me the one whose safety deems such destruction. This is the way.
I'm not sure this is such a good idea.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Holocron Archives. I am Max, and I will serve as your guide into the world of Star Wars and the galaxies beyond. Today, we will be examining one of the more mysterious beings in the universe, the Bendu.
I'm the one in the middle.
As we begin our adventure, I must remind everyone I do not work for Star Wars or Disney, and most of this is speculation and conjecture from a Star Wars fan to and for other Star Wars fans. I am a student of film and story structure, so I can only really offer what little insight and opinions I have. Let's get right into it.
Ah, you heard my call. Good. Your imbalance woke me from a deep slumber.
The Bendu first appears in the show Star Wars Rebels in the two-part opener for Season 3, Steps into Shadow. The Bendu also appears in episodes 303, 310, 315, 321, and 22, if you're counting. First, we will look at what the Bendu is in the context of in the universe. And then we will begin to speculate what it means to the greater story and what the Bendu could potentially mean to the future. What lessons can we take away from the story of the Bendu? As many of us know, Star Wars is actually full of life lessons and metaphors. The Bendu is a wise and enigmatic being that seems to exist beyond time and space. The Bendu is depicted as a giant creature with features that resemble a mountain, with an animal face and a large beard. I often get Tauren vibes from Warcraft when I see the Bendu, if you're a nerd like I am. The Bendu has large forearms that seem to be used for both walking and grabbing and using tools. The Bendu is a force-wielding entity of unknown origin, and little is actually known about its abilities. The Bendu resides on the planet Ation, which is located in the Lothal sector of the Outer Rim. The Bendu claims to be the physical manifestation of the center of the Force. This would suggest that the Bendu is as old as the Force itself, or at the very least, has existed as long as there has been Force users to manipulate it. The Bendu expresses that the light and the dark, which he refers to as the Ashland and the Bogan, which are used by the Jedi and the Sith, but don't actually understand the true nature of the Force. The Bendu believes that the battle between the two sides are minuscule compared to the greater conflicts that exist in the universe. He refuses to take part in aiding either side, the Jedi or the Sith. The Bendu sees himself as the one in the middle, the balance to the Force.
But you're not a Jedi.
Wielder? Jedi and Sith wield the Ashlar and Bogan, the light and the dark. I'm the one in the middle, the Bendu. What do you call yourself?
I am Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight.
If the Bendu is to be believed about this, then we must assume that the Bendu has some relationship to the father, the sister, and the brother, who all seem to be living manifestations of the Force as well. Are the sister and the brother the Ashland and the Bogan? Is the Bendu another part of the father? These are just some of the questions that we seek to answer as we journey further into the universe. In the year 2 BBY, Kanan Jarrus is a Jedi Knight left blind and struggling with his connection to the Force. This emotional distress causes an imbalance in the Force that awakens the Bendu from a great slumber. Now, if you're actually unfamiliar with how time works in Star Wars, we left off. The Bendu had been reaching out to Kanan Jarrus while he was meditating on the planet Ation. Kanan Jarrus had been left in emotional distress, and this is something that the Bendu was actually seeking out. He could feel the imbalance inside Kanan. Kanan Jarrus was a Jedi Knight that had existed outside of the norms of the Jedi Order for some time, and he was actually more in tune with his emotions than almost any other Jedi of his time. This is something that I think the Bendu could sense. Amongst one of the many powers of the Bendu is the ability to read a being's inner emotions and true intentions. Something that points to the Bendu actually telling the truth about being a manifestation of the Force.
Your imbalance woke me from a deep slumber.
Imbalance?
Your presence is like a violent storm in this quiet world.
You're a Force wielder. But you're not a Jedi.
The Bendu draws Kanan into the wilderness of Ation, where the Bendu reveals itself and then explains to Kanan that his emotional distress and the imbalance that it caused in the Force has actually awoken the Bendu from a great slumber. Kanan tries to explain the situation, but the Bendu scoffs at the idea of being able to wield and control the Force. The ancient being explains to the Jedi Knight that the Force is beyond the concepts of good or evil, that the true power comes from being able to maintain balance in the Force and in oneself. As the Bendu begins to mentor Kanan, the Bendu listens to Kanan as he explains the struggles that he faces as a teacher to a powerful Padawan, and the troubles that the people face against the Galactic Empire under the reign of the ruthless Emperor and his Sith. Specifically, Kanan has grown concerned that he exposed his Padawan, Ezra Bridger, to the dark side of the Force when they encountered a Sith holocron, an ancient relic containing secrets and religious texts. Don't worry, we will cover these more in the future. Kanan was recently left blind and had not adapted to his new handicap. He was fearful of the world around him, and what he could not see, he felt like was only concerned with harming him. This fed his negative emotions, and this affected his concentration and his connection to the Force. He was imbalanced, and the Bendu had taught Kanan that the power of clearing one's mind of fear and negativity, and the importance of letting go of what could not be and accepting one's own situation was one of the most important lessons in all of Star Wars. Although Kanan was left blind, his mind had actually been clouded by his inability to let go of his dependence on sight. He was so concerned at how much weaker he had perceived himself that he was completely unaware at how strong his other senses were, and how strong the Force was. Kanan had come to learn that when he fed his negativity into the Force, that he would only be helping feed those who draw power from negativity. Kanan had learned to reconnect himself with the Force, and he had felt the strength to go and rescue his Padawan Ezra. Before leaving, Kanan leaves the holocron with the Bendu, and the Bendu simply looks at it and laughs at the insignificance of such an object. Sometime later, Kanan's crew is attacked, and all but Kanan and Ezra are taken hostage by the former Sith Darth Maul. In an attempt to gain the Bendu's help, Kanan and Ezra set out to find the Bendu in the wilderness of Ation. The two young Jedi explain the situation to the Bendu, and that Maul was holding their crew ransom in order to get the Sith holocron that Kanan had left with the Bendu, and a Jedi holocron that the crew had already been in possession of. The Bendu seemed to be less concerned with the holocron containing power, and more with them containing vast libraries of knowledge, but that such amounts of information could grant both clarity and madness. Like the Force, knowledge and facts are not good or evil, but they can be siphoned off for either. The Bendu warns that once the secret is known, it cannot be unknown. Eventually, the Bendu lets Ezra go into a cave alone in order to retrieve the holocron. In a very Jedi Master-like fashion, Kanan instructs his Padawan to enter the cave without his lightsaber. This will become part of Ezra's Jedi trials. The experience in the cave left Ezra stronger and with more resolve in his own abilities and his connection to the Force and his connection to his master. The two then set off to rescue their team, but before they leave, the Bendu leaves them with one last warning. The test had just begun. By this point, the Bendu had grown to expect the nuisance known as Kanan and Ezra. Maul had been plaguing Ezra with dark visions and nightmares after both holocrons had been active together. The knowledge and the power had flowed through Ezra, but he could not hold on to them long enough and let go before the full secrets could be revealed. This seems to actually bother the Bendu for once. Suddenly, as they are discussing this encounter, the Bendu senses that they are being watched and vanishes. In another episode, the Bendu is spotted observing the Mandalorian Sabine Wren while she struggles to quell her fears. Her difficulties are stemming from her becoming the wielder of the Darksaber and possibly the savior of her people. As she meditates in the wilderness, she clears her mind. The Bendu can be seen, but he does not engage with the young Mandalorian. This is a clear sign that the Bendu seeks to maintain a balance in individuals, and those who are struggling with themselves call out to the Bendu. The Bendu's home of Ation had coincidentally become a base for Kanan's band of rebels. This eventually led to a lot of unwanted attention for the planet, which had become a sanctuary. The Bendu seems to have a stronger connection to nature and wilderness than it does to force-wielding beings. The Bendu can sense that animals have a stronger balance as they simply exist and survive beyond the pressures of what is good and evil.
There is only the Force. Now, turn and walk forward.
I'm not sure this is such a good idea.
And why not?
Because those spiders are out there, waiting.
How do you know this?
I hear them.
Good. Keep walking. Sound relates them to you. What else?
What should I do?
What do you want to do,
Run. But there's another one right behind me.
You are beginning to see. Now, be empty and continue onward.
Why aren't they attacking?
It is not in their nature,
Well, it has been in my experience.
because you do not see them.
You mean, see them for what they are?
Look closer.
There's nothing. I can't sense them.
Look within.
The Bendu has grown upset and irritated with Kanan Jarrus and his band of rebels. All of their actions have drawn unwanted attention from the Galactic Empire. This has put the whole planet in danger. The rebel base was ambushed by Grand Admiral Thrawn of the Galactic Empire. In a desperate attempt to save his friends and his loved ones, Kanan sped off into the wilderness to seek out the Bendu. He pleaded with the Ancient One to intervene and aid them in this fight, but the Bendu refused. It explains to Kanan that the Bendu is the one in the middle, that the Bendu must remain neutral. The Bendu then pushes the blame onto Kanan and his Jedi Order for bringing war to the peaceful world of Ation. Kanan then lashes out and calls the Bendu a coward. This truly angers the Bendu. The Bendu suddenly rises up into the air, transforming into a mighty dark storm full of smoke and lightning, and warns that the destruction of the Jedi and all of your kind is simply the will of the Force. The Bendu vows to carry out the Force's will, and it causes Kanan to flee back to his base, just before Grand Admiral Thrawn orders an orbital bombardment of the entire planet. All hope seems lost for the rebel crew as Thrawn and his men draw them into their grasp. The storm has grown and escalated until suddenly Thrawn is almost struck with a mighty bolt of lightning as a pair of glowing eyes appear in the dark clouds. A thunderous, booming voice proclaims, "I am the Bendu. I bring death." As dozens of lightning strikes proceed to destroy both the Imperial AT-AT walkers and the rebel starfighters. The thunderous voice demands that both sides of the battle leave the planet immediately. Killing several Death Troopers with his powerful lightning, the Bendu has proven his point. Kanan tries to lead his rebels off the planet, but is attacked by the Bendu one last time before they narrowly escape. Several more ships are destroyed in the escape process. Many lose their lives. As the rebels flee, the Bendu turns its sights on the Imperial army. Thrawn orders his men to kill the entity, to unleash all weapons in order to bring it down. The Bendu is seemingly struck and falls to the ground before Thrawn. Thrawn, ever the curious one, seeks to engage with the Bendu and asks what kind of creature it is. And the Bendu replies, "I am beyond your power to destroy." Thrawn disagrees, but the Bendu proceeds to warn Thrawn that he is blind to his own defeat. "Many are surrounding you in a cold embrace," the Bendu warns, before disappearing into a puff of smoke before Thrawn can even shoot him. Not to give anything away, but this is a very specific prophecy that actually comes true. Is the Bendu able to tell the future? Does the Bendu control the Force? Or is it simply a manifestation of the Force's will in order to deal with how the Force is balanced between a light and dark side? Does the existence of the Bendu mean that the Ashland and the Bogan have manifestations too?
What manner of creature are you?
One beyond your power to destroy.
It would not seem so.
You cannot see. But I can.
What do you see?
I see your defeat, like many arms surrounding you in a cold embrace.
As we are left with a few answers, we are left with more questions. The ideas pushed by the Bendu are similar to the ideology behind the term Grey Jedi. The term is loosely defined catch-all that has been used to describe those who stray from the Jedi Code but do not fall to the dark side. The phrase is left over from the old Star Wars legends, which were an expansive collection of stories and books that are no longer considered canon. We will definitely be covering many legend stories and be examining how they tie into the new canon. As we see here with the introduction of the Bendu, we can tell that this is actually a revamping of some old ideas from the Star Wars legends, brought back into the new canon with a fresh take. The Grey Jedi were actually created out of the Jedi. These Force users were pushing against the idea of cutting oneself off from their emotions. This is how we see the Jedi in the prequel movies. Very strict, very dogmatic, anti-emotion. The Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus struggles with anxiety and negative thoughts while trying to overcome his blindness. The Bendu instructs him to calm his emotions and trust the Force and his feelings, to seek balance within his emotions. The term Bendu is actually first seen in the original script for the first Star Wars film, A New Hope. The name Jedi Bendu was the original term for Jedi Knights. The word would again be used in the Star Wars Legends universe. The Order of the Dai Bendu was an ancient organization that studied the Force and the mysterious midichlorians in the very early hyperspace age, long before the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Council that we know. According to legends, the monks of the Dai Bendu Order eventually made their way to a planet Tython. Tython was where many different Force wielders would gather and eventually become the Jedi Order, the first incarnation of the Jedi. Before the establishment of the Jedi Order, many cultures did not understand the Force or those who could wield it. Some were regarded as wizards, others as demons. Once Disney purchased the rights to Star Wars, they had established that all of the Legends material was no longer canon. However, the creatives working on projects now have been able to reach back, learn, and take from Legends materials, pick out what they can use and revise what they can't, reincarnated into the new universe. Is the Bendu a sign that the Grey Jedi are coming back? I would have to say so. There are actually plenty of signs pointing in this direction, and I believe the biggest is indeed the Bendu. The Bendu tries to get Kanan to understand that the Jedi and the Sith are both wrong, that they're insignificant in the grand scheme of the Force and the universe. The Bendu believes that they are blind to the true power of the Force. The hints that the Bendu drops suggest that the Force is something beyond the Ashland and the Bogan, and that the true nature of the Force is neither good nor evil. That using the Force in that context only results in weakening the power of the Force. They are too focused on themselves and destroying the other to really open their minds completely. The Jedi must move on from their old ways. This is also highlighted in the newest Star Wars films, such as The Rise of Skywalker. Luke tries to get Rey to understand the same concepts. Luke spent a lifetime chasing to become a Jedi Master that it eventually took losing himself to really understand the bigger picture. The most powerful Force users are able to master their emotions. They must be in control of them, not simply cut them off. I believe the Bendu sees that manipulating the Force at all is missing the point. We must use the Force and use our emotions. We must balance and center ourselves to really achieve something bigger.
Interesting.
One of the proposed questions at this point would be, where do the light and dark side come from? Were they created the first time a Force user was able to manipulate them and harness the power of the Force for their own purposes? Was the light created as a response to someone using the Force for evil? As we are left with some answers, we are always left with more questions. This is the genius of Star Wars. We are left with just enough breadcrumbs that we cannot help but follow the trail down the rabbit hole. In the Star Wars novel series Aftermath, it is suggested by a dark servant of the Force, Yup Tashu, a Sith cultist and historian, that actions carried out with dark intention can leave a stain upon the Force. That those who try to wield the dark side are forever changed, and their bodies are physically altered. This is a suggestion that the dark side of the Force is even too powerful for even the strongest of Force wielders, as evident by Palpatine's decaying body. All of this points to the dark side being created, that somewhere exists a true manifestation of evil and the atrocities that have damaged the Force. Palpatine is obsessed with the unknown regions of space. He's even heard something calling to him. Could this be the same greater evil Grand Admiral Thrawn has warned Palpatine about? Could there be a manifestation of the dark and the light living in the unknown regions of space? If the light and dark side were actually created by those trying to use the Force, then how is the Bendu manifested? Is the Bendu actually born out of the will of the Force to try to bring the Force back into balance? The Bendu often refers to itself as the Bendu and places emphasis on being beyond life and death. This seems to suggest that the Bendu is a manifestation of the Force and the will of the Force itself. One of the keys to understanding this is the planet Ation. In one of the episodes of Rebels, Grand Admiral Thrawn refers to Ation as being a hidden planet with a lost ancient race. Is it possible that this race is the Dai Bendu, and that the Dai Bendu were tasked with bringing balance into the Force, and that this actually manifested in creating the Bendu, a being brought about to bring ultimate balance to both those who use the Force and the universe itself? These are just some of the questions that we are left pondering as we investigate the mysteries of the galaxy. Join me again as we dive deeper into the Star Wars universe and beyond. And as always, may the Force be with you.
This is the